In this video, we're going to look at making transitions between two pictures, just very simply creating some interest between cuts, between seams, something more than just stopping something and starting something. So create a little bit more interest in our motion graphics and our animations, whatever the case is. So here I am. I'm going to make a new composition in After Effects 2022, and I'm going to keep it very simple. Now the graphics I happen to have are 1080 by 1080, so I'm going to keep it that as going to be my dimensions. Make sure to name your comps. Always name your comps. So I'm going to call this one transitions because I'm going to make a bunch of transitions here. 1080, 1080. 24 frames per second, full resolution, 30 seconds for now, it's fine. If I need more, I could add more time later, not a big deal. So there it is. I'm going to have my resolution at full just so I could see it. If I start to have issues, I could obviously bring my resolution down, but this is where I am right now. So here's my couple pictures. I'm going to drag and drop my pictures into my project panel, a couple RGB JPEGs here, and that's it. So what I have, and make sure to obviously keep your file organized. I have a transition folder, I have my AEP, which I'm about to save right now, and my assets. I have a couple, those graphics that I just dragged in came from my assets folder. Okay, so let me go file and let me save as, and I'm going to go find and make sure I save this AEP, the project, properly. And there I go. I'm just going to call this transitions. All right, there we go, done. Okay, so I'm all ready to go. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to bring these two graphics into my layer panel, and there they are. I got one. Shut that off. I have the other. Oh, I shut both off at the same time. There we go. Perfect. Okay, so all set up, ready to go. So what I want to do, I don't just want to create a situation where I have maybe my bottom graphic. I'll go up to say 5 seconds here, and I will have this one disappear at 5 seconds, and this one reappear at 5 seconds. So let's just do a 10-second. And see how that goes. So right now, if I play it, this one appears, it's visible, and then it's going to go away, and then the next one's going to appear. Now that's a transition right there, actually, but it's not very interesting. It's just a cut transition. It just goes from one to another, invisible to visible. So what we want to do is we want to create a little bit of interest. But the idea behind the transition is really to have something shown, something else comes up to move it along, and then the next thing is shown. So let's see how this works. So I'm going to make something very simple. So this is just going to be a simple wipe. Very basic. So I'm just going to bring in a new layer. So layer new, and I could obviously make a full square that's going to cover this, but instead I'm just going to make something simple like a solid layer. Now it's going to be the comp size 1080 by 1080, which is perfect. And for now, you know what? I'm going to make it a different color, which I have. There's kind of like a brown and a blue. So let's just make this one, even for now, let's just make it black. There we go. So yeah, I have a black square now. Once again, I could have just dragged out a shape layer square, but I didn't. So that's okay. I'm going to call black solid. I'm just going to call this a wipe. Okay, there we go. So very simple. Now obviously when we bring in a layer and something like this, it takes up the whole timeline, which we obviously don't need. And realistically, we only need a small bit of it. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to put it right in here for now. I can move this around anytime I want, but for now I just want this to happen. But what I can do is I can just say, okay, so at this point something's going to happen at this point. Now if I want this graphic to be a full 5 seconds, that's fine. I'm going to say right at this point, it's going to have its full 5 seconds, and then something's going to happen, and then another image is going to be revealed. So let's see how this works. So here I have my black transition, my black square. I'm just going to move it across the scene. That's it. I'm just going to do a simple position animation. And it's just going to start at one spot and go to another. So let's bring that down, twirl it down. Let's see our transform, and I have my position. There I am. So I'm going to say that right here, this is all it's going to happen. It's just going to go from here. So it's going to show that right now it is just showing what is below, which happens to be nothing at the moment. But obviously if I move this over here, I could see that's what's going to be shown. If I extend this over, yes, it's going to be, that's what's actually being shown right there. Okay. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to do a quick position animation. So I'm going to save my keyframe here, position, great. And then at this point, what's going to happen is it's going to slide over and reveal the next thing. So I'm going to create another keyframe. I could click here, make the keyframe, or I could just move this because my CTI is there. And let's just say it's going to go over here. And as it moves over at this point, right here in the middle, once it's fully covered, so right here is the point where I'm going to bring this back, and I'm going to introduce this one here. So right at this area where my transition comes in fully covering I can then say, okay, it's going to wipe out and the next thing shows up. So let's do a quick animation here. Take a quick peek, press the space bar and take a look at the RAM preview. My one picture shown, the wipe comes up, and then my next shows. Very, very simple. That's it. There's my one transition. Let's keep going along here and kind of play around with this. So I'm just going to shut this one off. Now, another one we could do, very, very basic, is we could do a simple fade to black or fade out to black or fade to white, fade in from white. So let's just play around with that. So I'm just going to do the same thing, layer, new, and new solid. And this one I'll make black as well. It's fine. There I go. It takes up the whole space and I don't really have to worry about that. I'm going to move it up and I'm going to call this one fade, because it's going to fade in or fade out. I'm going to do a little bit of both. So let's pretend I just want this actually to fade in altogether. Just my first initial scene of my graphic, my animation, my video is just going to fade in. Okay, so it starts at black and then it's going to fade in. So let me just take these two and let's move them over right about here. Okay, so I have my CTI set right here. It's black. Okay, so let's do a simple opacity transform. So here I am, I'm at 100%, and right about here, let's just say, actually, you know what, let's do it right here. Let's do a simple fade here where I have my opacity, it's at 100%. And at this point, I'm just going to click on the opacity, make sure my stopwatch is on, my keyframe is here, it's 100%. And then at the end of it, it's going to be 0%. That's it. Now that happened there, I clicked on this accidentally and I did not make it full 100. Sometimes my mouse goes back a little bit and doesn't make it proper. So there I go, I'm just gonna press play. Okay, so what I should have here is when I did this, when I moved it over, I'm gonna scrub right here. When it starts to get to 80, obviously I should already start to see what's underneath. So if I want, I could actually move the keyframe over to the start of where that graphic is, so that way it's all black and then it starts to fade in and I could see the graphic underneath. All right, so let's play that really quickly. Goes to the cut. Actually, you know what? Let's turn this on again so we can see that transition. Let's fix that up. There we go. I believe that's where it lies. Perfect. And what I'm doing, I'm just going to copy this and fade out. So let's just duplicate that, Command D. I'm going to move this over here. And now instead of it actually fading in, I'm going to fade it out. So go into black and kind of fade it in again. This time I'm just going to reverse it. Now let's see if I could just do a time reverse. So I'm going to just twirl that down on the last one I just made. I'm just going to select these two keyframes, just like this. I'm going to right click, keyframe assistant, time reverse. So let's see what happens now. So now it fades out very simply. All right, so there I go. Fades out to black. That's it, nice and easy. So the time reverse just reverses what they do. That's it. So now this one is 0% and this one's 100, where normally this was 100 and this was 0. That's all it does. Or of course I could just click on this, brought my CTI over, changed it, and then the same thing, shift over, click on my keyframe and make sure it's selected and then move that. So that's it. A very simple fade in and then a fade out. All right, so what I want to do now, very simply, it's black. Maybe I want to fade it in. I don't want it to be black. I want it to be white. Not a problem. I select the layer. I go to layer, solid settings, and I just click and make it whatever color I want. It doesn't have to be white, but I'm going to make it white. Okay, new, done. There it is. Now it's white. Same with this one. I select the layer, solid settings, just to show you how quick it is. And I'm going to just change it to red, let's just say. Say, okay, there it is. Okay. Change it, and then it's going to fade out to red. That's it. Very simple. So very easy way. Two simple transitions very quickly. Now the next one I'm going to do is a very simple cross dissolve. So I'm just going to duplicate these because these are working out quite well. Just duplicate, Command D. I'm going to bring them up and I'm going to shut everything else off. Here I go. So same thing. I have these two layers. Great. And now I'm just going to do a cross dissolve. So with a cross dissolve, mainly what's going to happen, one's going to appear, one's going to disappear. So I'm just going to actually have to overlay these. At one point, they have to be overlaid for this particular transition. So that's all I'm going to do, really, is I'm just going to have this one show up and this one's going to fade in. So I don't really have to do anything to this one, but let me look at this one here. So the one on top, I'm just going to do a simple opacity change. So from here, the opacity, actually no, right about here, I need the opacity to be 100. So at the end of this picture, the opacity for this one needs to be 100. So I'm going to click on a stopwatch there, and yes, it's going to be 100. So let me go back to the beginning of it and make it 0. So I'm going to bring the stopwatch there, my keyframes there, now it's 0. So let's see what happens there. So this one's going to show up, it shows, and then this other one's going to slowly come in as a cross dissolve and just take over. That's it. That's your cross dissolve. Very simple. Let's play that through. There we go. Very simple. All right, there's a simple cross dissolve, nice and easy. Next, what I want to do is I do want to show actually some of the great effects we have here in our transition. There's so many, not a lot, but they all can play and have quite a few different options to play around with. I'm going to choose it from here. So once again, I'm going to have this. So we did a simple cross dissolve. Let me duplicate these again. There we go, bring them up. All right, I'm just going to shut these ones off. And you know what I like to do? I like to actually group these in terms of color. So these ones are a certain one. These are kind of work together in a certain way too. I really like to color coordinate my layers. So these ones obviously will be a little bit different. So here I am, and I'm just going to do a simple wipe now. With the wipe, I don't like actually attaching the effect to actually one of the layers that is in transition. I actually like to make a new layer. So I could either make a solid layer, or I could actually just make an adjustment layer. So I'm going to show you that you could actually use an adjustment layer to create and to put a transition on it. So once again, it doesn't have to be the full length. I'm going to move this one back here. Great. And I'm going to bring this back. So this is going to be my adjustment layer, which is going to have the transition on it. So let's just pick a transition. Let's find one here. Go to transition. Got a bunch of different ones. Block dissolve, card wipe, lots of different wipes, different ways to play around with it. You know what? Let's just choose a radial wipe. Okay, never really used this one before, so let's try it out. So because I had that, now I have this effect on this adjustment layer. Let's name it properly. This is a radial wipe. Okay, that's the effect. Let's see what it does. Okay, so right here, let's see what it does. I can go to click on the effect, and I could actually do some of the changes right here, which I probably will, because anytime I need to use the timeline and create some animation, I like to do some of the work here. Other times I could actually just click on my effect controls and do some of the options and changes here. So usually the transition, it's a transition completion. So let's see what the completion looks like. Let's see what it does. Okay, so that's my radial wipe. Very simple. Okay. So let's set it. So number one, what we need to see is nothing happening. So right here, this is my transition. I'm going to do my transition completion. I'm going to start the stopwatch, and there's my keyframe, which is happening nothing. There's zero completion. Nothing's happened. Midway through, so halfway where the pictures meet, I'm going to do a 100%. So I'm going to scrub it all the way, or just type in 100. And then at the end, I'm going to bring in another keyframe and make it 0%. Or I can select this keyframe, which is already 0%, copy it, and because my CTI is here, wherever my CTI is, once I paste that keyframe, that's where it's going to end up, where the CTI is. So I'm going to paste it. That's it. Done. It's a 0% completion keyframe. It's going to be 100%, then 0%. That's it. So let's see how this works. And that's it. Now I still had that opacity on here, so let's get rid of that. There we go. Kind of had two transitions going on there at once. One more time. There's my picture, radial wipe, and it goes in very nicely. Well, you know what? Let's play around with that radial wipe a little bit. So right about here is where I like to kind of halfway through is where I like to play around. So let's actually click on that effect and see what else we could do. Well, start angle. Maybe the start angle starts somewhere else. Maybe it starts on the side. Maybe it starts on the bottom. Let's do it on the side just to show a little bit of difference. I'll do it 90 degrees. Wipe center. Well, where's the wipe center from? Is that actually going to be the center? Can I move my X over? Maybe it starts somewhere else. Let's try it over here. Maybe I move my Y axis over. Maybe it starts over here for some very weird reason. Let's play it through, see what happens. Okay, that's kind of interesting. Not to say that I would use that, but nonetheless, it is great that we have these options to play around with. So I'm just going to undo those and get back to the center. Wipe clockwise, counterclockwise, both. Let's see what it does. Pretty interesting. All right, so we have kind of like this cut look, and we could also add a feather. Let's add a little bit of feather and see what that does. Let's go all the way. Okay, here we are. And it's still, even at this point, even with the feather and whatever options you have, it still does a full completion. And that's what we're looking at there, which is pretty great. All right, so that is kind of how that works. However, it's white. Maybe I don't want this to be white. Well, how do I change it? Well, currently my layer, my adjustment layer is white. So actually, let's change that. So I'm just going to go to Layer and Solid Settings and change my adjustment layer to any different color. Let's just go to even just a gray. Let's do a gray. And there we go. Okay, perfect. And I'll say okay. So now when that happens, nothing changed. That's okay. What I can do is I can actually come over to this adjustment layer and I could actually click off of that. And what it does, it allows for that color to show through now. So let's take a look at that again. So that's one way to change the color of it there. Okay, very simple, nice and easy, okay? So that's what we're looking at there. And I am gonna bring that back just to have that on. And I got that white again there too, which is great. Okay, very simple. What I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna use a mask to make another type of transition. So I'm just gonna duplicate my layers again, bring it up, change the color. And there we go. So now what I want to do, I'm going to add actually a mask to a layer. So let's do that. How do I do that? A couple different ways to add a mask. The layer is selected. I could actually choose a either a rectangle or whatever. I'm going to choose the ellipse. I could add a mask. There it is right there. Let's make sure these are visible. There we go. I could also add with the pen tool, add a mask. I see my cursor has the circle and square with a mask. Or I could also go layer, new mask and new mask, but I do want a circle layer. So let's try this out. And what I can do is I'm going to make a really, really large circle. So I'm going to make it cover the whole thing here. I'm going to hold down Shift so that it stays as a perfect circle, but I'm going to make it really, really big. And here I am. Oh, if I double click on the actual, oh, I took it away. If I double click on the actual path of the mask, I actually select the whole mask. And I can move it around, do whatever I want, zoom out a little bit. I'm gonna make it a little bit bigger because I want it to cover, so I gotta hold down Shift to make sure it stays in proportion. I want it to cover the whole area so I can see everything, and then I'm gonna bring it down. So let's try that out. Once again, holding down Option, make sure it's big, perfect, there it goes. So I'm gonna actually use a mask expansion to make it smaller. So right now, everything can be seen, perfect. And right about here is where it changes. So what I need to do is I'm gonna make it expand and contract right about here. So right about here, let's just say, because I need to have this overlaid. And because it's a mask, something it's going to hide. So I need to have this layer above the next layer that I wanted to show. So let's do this mask expansion. So right here, I'm going to click on my stopwatch and there's my keyframe saying my mask expansion right now is exactly as is, nothing changes. But what I'm going to do, then I'm going to contract it right about here. And I'm going to slide this in right about here. And I'm going to now make it contract. So I'm going to bring it down. And there I go. Hold on Shift, bring it down all the way. And there I go. So now it doesn't say that perfect circle even at the end, but it still does a pretty great job of what I wanted to do. And there is my mask change. Now you could also do a mask path where the path changes and then obviously reveals what's below, but the mask expansion is pretty easy to use too. And obviously if you wanted to, you could do a reversal. Let's see if that works. Select the keyframes, keyframe assistant, time reverse keyframes. Let's see if this works. So it does come up, so that's pretty cool too. So it comes up to that. So if I wanted to, I could actually bring this over here. Bring this back. See, this was the first one. Bring these keyframes over. And there we go. There's another transition coming from up top. So once again, this keyframe was saying there was nothing going on here. It said really small, and then it reversed and went really big. So let's do that one more time. There it is. There we go. Okay, so two different ways to play with that mask transition, the mask expansion, pretty simple to use as well, kind of fun as well to play around with. Now there are so many ways to create even more transitions, camera wipes and all these different ways, using light effects to do it too. It's dark and then obviously it's light and then something else shows. But the main idea behind a transition is you're showing something, then you're going to hide something, then you're going to show something else. And if you have that nice in between where something happens, then you could have this nice, interesting either fade or wipe or any kind of transition that really creates some more interest in your movie.